Hi everyone, Harry here. Hope you enjoy the show. As you know, we can't keep doing this podcast unless we get support. And I'm very pleased to say on this episode, we are supported by MotoGP Premier. And I'm legally bound to tell you, this is an advert. Get ready for a heart-pounding adventure at the official 75th anniversary of MotoGP at the British Grand Prix. Be there when the fastest motorcycles in the world roar to life at one of motorsport's most iconic venues. Enjoy the special retro liveries from all teams and off-track entertainment too, with performances by the Kooks, Sigma, the Darkness, and jaw-dropping stunt shows. It's going to be awesome.
Hello, you're listening to the OMG MotoGP podcast with former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Huewen and myself, Amy Reynolds, and we're joined once again by Jack Appleyard, one of Dorna's reporters and commentators who is down on the ground this weekend, so is the right man to give us all the scoops on the big news that has been thrown up from the Dutch Grand Prix. We come away from a race where Pecco Bagnaia, if he has ever looked like the man to beat this season, I think it is that. That was a real statement of intent. His performance just really backed up why he is the double world champion. And I think, Keith, it just looked as though he was totally owning that Grand Prix. It looks as though it was in the palm of his hand.
What I like about it is it feels to me like he's preparing for next year and the battle that he's going to have with his teammate, Marc Marquez, of course. So I really kind of like that. But we know he won his first Grand Prix at Assen, and he's got the tattoo to prove it. And this is his fifth win, I think it is, from memory. I haven't checked, but I'm sure that's right. And he just looked like in a different level right the way from the start. I mean, I don't know what they've done with that Ducati compared with all the other Ducatis, but that is a drag bike off the line now. We've never seen anything quite like that. He's got it absolutely sorted. What I like about Pecco Bagnaia, and I'm sure Jack will back us up on this one, is that he's got that kind of personality where he seems like a bit of a pushover in a personal point of view. I mean, he's such a nice guy, quite eloquent, quite laid back, quite easy. You know, I've never heard him aggressive, but blimey, when it comes to the racetrack, we've got a completely different guy. And that is exactly what he's going to need next year. We always used to call Marc Marquez the smiling assassin. It was funny. There was a lot of commentary talk about at the weekend, Jack, that they were saying that, you know, Pecco with Marc in the same team, it will be a fillip for him if he beats him next year and he can say he won the World Championship with the best in the world. But I don't think Marc Marquez is the Marc Marquez of 4 or 5 years ago. So I don't think that even actually counts, that particular comment. But it's amazing how everyone at the moment is jockeying around for that soundbite piece of information.
Yeah, as ever, you know how the media works. You're always looking for that 10-second clip you can get a headline out of. But on the weekend, yeah, Pecco was pretty perfect, wasn't he? You just kind of felt from the first free practice session, actually, incredibly, the first time in his MotoGP career that he topped the first session of a weekend. So the fact that he'd done that, you almost just felt from, what was it, 10:30, 11 o'clock on Friday morning, that the writing was on the wall and he was going to go out and do exactly what he did. Smashed the lap record, won the sprint by leading every lap, won the Grand Prix by leading every lap. It's just one of those places that Pecco gels with. Didn't make it the most interesting of weekends, you have to say, as a result, because he didn't really allow anyone to get close to him. But yeah, now 5 wins on the bounce. But you have to say the most impressive thing, of course, Pecco is on this incredible run, but still doesn't lead the World Championship. Got to give credit to Jorge Martin that even when it might not be his weekend and even when he can see that someone else has just got the edge on him, he's still putting it in second and limiting the damage as best as he possibly can do. And he's now held on to that championship lead for a good few months now, and Pecco is throwing everything at him, but he's not blinking at the moment, so fair play to Martin.
They both kind of matured, haven't they? Because you could expect that kind of mistake that Pecco would make when he's got that big race lead. We've seen him make those kind of unforced errors, if you like, in the past. And Jorge Martin, when he has to try double hard, throw it at the fence. Both of them have got over those situations, haven't they? So it's a proper duel at the front now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jorge Martin has got to be feeling the heat, though, now, right, Jack?
Ask me that in 7 days' time after the Saxon Ring. He won there last year, of course, in that great fight with Pecco. I think he probably went into the weekend at Mugello, knowing that was Pecco's place. Going to Assen, knowing that probably That's Pecco's place as well. And he did the double in both, but now we're going to a place where he's had success before. So if Pecco continues this run and he gets beaten there, going into the summer break and he's then got 3 weeks to think about it, then I think he definitely will start to feel the heat. But I'm sure in the back of his mind, his team around him will have said, look, you're not going to win every weekend. These are Pecco circuits. These are places he's had a lot of success at before. So almost be expecting that second is a good result. That's the best you can get. Now we're going to his patch. So let's see how he responds. I think that's what makes this weekend extra interesting.
We know where Jorge Martin will be today, though, don't we, Keith? In that tattoo shop.
Getting the Saxon ring stuck on his arm. If they'll be doing everything now. Well, we might have it stuck on his arm. Who knows where it might be placed on his body? But answers below, please, in the comments. Where should he have it placed? Anybody want to make a comment? But the tattoos aside, he hasn't got room for them because he's got that many scars on his arm. Marc Marquez at the weekend, I think, didn't have the kind of weekend that I think a lot of us were expecting. Whether he will at Saxon Ring coming up, because he's a guy that also goes pretty well around there. But he really found himself a bit at sea and not enough track time with the varying track temperatures that we were getting to get that all right. Grassini looked Frank Carcetti looked quite, shall we say, glum at the prospect that they hadn't quite got that tyre pressure right in the main race. The antics, the things that these riders go through nowadays and the things that they have to calculate. The fact is that he signalled to get someone to go past him so he could sit in the hot air behind another motorcycle so he could keep that tyre pressure up because he knew it was too low over too long and he was going to get a penalty for it. And sure enough, he did. What was the fallout in that, Jack, in the paddock?
Well, he obviously got the 16-second penalty, dropped him from 4th to 10th, it was, in the end. He kind of blamed Enea Bastianini, that harsh move where there was a bit of contact that pushed him wide. Kind of felt that there is what allowed him to drop out. And it took so long for the penalty to come out because I can't remember, I don't know the exact reading, but from what Matt was saying, it was basically 0.01%. He missed out by half a lap. It was so minute, but unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of talk about sort of offside in football at the moment, and if you're offside by a toenail, you're still offside, and it looks as though it was that kind of situation for Marc, which is really unlucky. It's a difficult one. The tyre pressure rule is brought in for safety. Do we want to see Marc Marquez looking over his shoulder and waving other riders through halfway through a race? No.
I think it gives fantastic presence of mind, though, doesn't it, from Marc? I mean, I've never seen that before in my life. I mean, people are aware of where their tyre pressure are nowadays because they've got it obviously on their dashboard. But for that presence of mind to cut it that fine when it was clearly a problem for him was pretty damn impressive. And bearing in mind that they had the running time that they had on track. He crashed on Saturday. Friday was different track temperatures. Everything was against them, really, from a data point of view. And that is so critical nowadays, Jack.
Yeah, I think the sprint crash, crashing out on the second lap, in the end is what really hurt him on Sunday because he had no data to go off whatsoever in race trim. And he's spoken all year about how even we're into 8 rounds now, he still needs to get laps and miles under the belt of these different circuits with this new Ducati to get a full understanding of it. And he held his hands up. He was absolutely raging on Saturday when he came to speak to the media because he said, on the first lap, I did exactly the same thing. I had a massive warning when I went across the curbs at turn 2. And then I did exactly the same thing on the second lap, and this time the front folded. So I've only got myself to blame. It's unusual for a man of Marc Marquez's ability to be making schoolboy errors, which I think he would probably hold his hands up and say it was. And because he missed out on all of that data, he wasn't able to take the step from Saturday to Sunday that everyone around him was able to make.
Keith, going back to the tyre pressure rule, it's not something we've seen in races before, but I'd argue that it's not something we do want to see in races. Like, do you want to see someone holding back because they're worried about their tyre pressures?
No, and it's also dangerous at the end of the day when someone's trying to slot in behind the hot air of other motorcycles. It's a tricky one. I mean, they're all it's there for safety. Michelin set the minimum tyre pressure that they want their tyres, their product to be run at, because any lower and they deem that to be an issue, or could be an issue potentially. So they've got a minimum tyre pressure, and we all must. And of course, most of these guys in hot conditions they start off with lower tyre pressures, and they've got a percentage of the race where they've got to run them above that lowest amount. But they do run. Everyone will be running low tyre pressures to start with, generally, until they're all up to speed and everything's getting a bit warmer. So they missed out by a little bit. And as Jack said, it's data. At the end of the day, they only missed out because of data. It was a situation none of us want to see. They didn't want to see either. But that rule is pretty specific. And I'm amazed we don't see more aggravation to go with it. Last year, there was, tons of people that were running under for a longer time. And we don't see that as much now. So the teams have to get on top of the thing. Pit lane, speed limits, all these kind of statutory rules, if you like, are a pain in the backside, but they are the way it is. Track limits, it's another argument that we have quite a lot of, and blimey, there are a lot of people that were running track limits. It's easy to do at a place like Assen, and the wind as well whips across there. They're fast old corners. Got to bear in mind, when you've got fast corners, you've got a lot of gyroscopic speed going through through the wheels, which means it's a real physical effort to get from side to side at that kind of speed, because the wheels are turning as hard as they are. Julian Ryder used to have this wonderful demonstration. He used to get a push bike wheel in his hand and spin it, and then you've got to turn it like that after you. Anyway, I won't go there. It was scientific. He did used to say his dad was a scientist.
Jack,
bless him.
Jack, do you think that with the new tyre pressure rules, so they're not really new tyre pressure rules, but in terms of like the regulation of the tyre pressure rules amongst the field, do you think we'll see less of those rides where you see a rider come all the way through the field because they're worried about coming in and incurring a penalty?
Not necessarily. I think it's more challenging in modern MotoGP to come through from 20th, 15th on the grid if the level is so high and there's such a small margin between everyone. The penalty for Marc is obviously going to gain a lot of media attention because it's Marc Marquez, and whatever he does, it always gains media attention. But on the other side of the coin, you've got to say that 22 other riders and teams didn't fall foul of it. So, you don't want to criticise too much, but potentially they made a bit of an error, the Gresini team, in not getting it 100% right, because everyone else was able to get it sorted. And, there was big gaps throughout the field as well, given the pace of the two guys at the front. Pecco, of course, they would have managed it differently, expecting him from pole position to lead the race for all of it. But for the vast majority, there was other riders further back that, because the field spread out, maybe weren't expecting to have so much clean air, but they were able to stay within it. So I think it's just one of those things. This is only the second time all year that it's happened. We had that freak race in Jerez, ironically, the last time I was on, so maybe it's a bad luck charm. And that was a weird race with 60-70% of the riders crashing out. This time around, it was just one rider. So I think after 16 races, now only having 2 races where we've had this, one of them being a freak event. They did change the rules over the winter time, and it's clearly had an effect where it's not impacting the results as frequently as it was at the end of last year. So hopefully it will just be a one-off event in odd circumstances from now on.
Goes to show you, though, how much difference riding style between the Marquez brothers must be. Alex Marquez was having a great time at Gresini, really riding very, very well this weekend. No problem with his tyre pressures. So data-wise, it can be, from rider to rider, style to style, setup to setup can make a massive difference as well. We should also mention, actually, Alex Marquez announced that he's re-signed for Gresini. So the Gresini guys have filled in one of their seats. So Alex Marquez stays on, which I think is a good thing. I think he rode really well at the weekend. It'd be interesting to see if the pressure off of a contract gives him a better late 2/3 of this season.
Well, Jack, I was going to ask you, follow up from that. Do you think that Alex Marquez, we know at the moment there are almost more riders than there are seats available. Is Alex Marquez worthy of that seat, do you think?
Yes. Has he been pulling up trees so far this year? He's not really had that many standout performances, but Ducati are in a weird situation, which is strange to say for the team that has dominated the sport for the past 2-3 years, whereby, I'm sure we'll get onto it, they've lost Pramac, they've lost Jorge Martin, they've lost Marco Bezzecchi, they've lost Enea Bastianini. There's talk that maybe Fabio Di Giannantonio could leave as well. And then suddenly they need to keep hold of their riders because they're moving from 8 to 6 bikes next year. They've gone all in on Marc Marquez. I spoke to Gigi Dell'Igna on Sunday evening and put that question to him. Is Marc worth all of this? He said, this isn't an after effect of Marc Marquez's decision. And, some people might argue potentially there are some ripple effects of that. But I don't think they had any choice. Alex, he's not done a bad job. Has he been grabbing headlines? No, but they need to keep hold of a rider that's got experience of the bike, and they need to try and keep hold of some talent as well, because at the moment, there's a mass exodus at Ducati, and I think it could really put them in a bit of issues next year, especially as well, interestingly enough. Gigi Dell'Igna said that the plan at the moment, which caught a few people by surprise, is that next year they only want to have 3 GP25s, 3 full factory bikes on the grid. Those are the 2 factory bikes for Marc and Pecco, and then potentially 1 for VR46 and maybe Frankie Morbidelli. So they're going to reduce down from 4 full factory bikes to 3, and then only have 3 one-year-old machines. So it's a real moment of change for Ducati, and you do feel as though this era of dominance is really starting to come to an end potentially next year, given the talents that the other factories have got.
Either that, or it's a very, very smart move. Gigi Dell'Igna, at the end of the day, he knows about the engineering situation that they're going to be in come 2027. We've got completely new motorbikes for 2027. So all of a sudden, they're looking forward to that. Pulling back some of the engineering from the factory machinery will be inevitable. Everyone's going to have to do it at some point. They're going to have to start switching to the development of the 2027 machinery. And that's why I feel that they're pulling back a little bit from it. I think what they've had has been a bit of a shock to the system. Pramac walking away, it sort of puts into perspective why people, Marc Marquez, when he said he wouldn't sign for Pramac, well, you know why? Because he already knew that they weren't going to be with Ducati. There's no way that these guys don't know what's going on weeks in advance of what we say, or even catch on to. So a lot of that, the horse trading has already been done behind the trucks, and they've already pretty much worked out who's going where and what's going, what motors they're going to be running. I mean, for me, actually, today is Yamaha's birthday. So today we're recording. We're recording on the Monday, and it's Yamaha's Yamaha Motor Corporation's, was it 50th or something, birthday? Can't remember, something like that. It is from the formation of Yamaha. And I am actually so bloody impressed. I just didn't think Yamaha were going to go. You mentioned all in a bit earlier on. They have gone all in. They have spent money. They have gone in with Pramac, a great team. Listening to Campionotti at the weekend, talking with Susie Perry and the like, Campionotti, he's an odd character, but blimey, they've properly gone with it with Yamaha, and it's a 7-year deal. So they transit right the way through the time into 27, and the new motorbikes. So I think that Yamaha, this is a great time for Yamaha to turn it around, and at the same time, Honda have done nothing, except seeing Joan Mir again chucking it up the street. Joan Mir, I'll tell you what, he should get a crown for the hardest trial on the worst bike on the grid, because I've never known anybody crash, apart from Marc Marquez, but he's an exception anyway. I haven't looked at the Fools report. I don't know whether you have. That's an FALL, by the way, not the FOOL, because I had that one. The Fools report is the one that we get every week to give us an indication as how many people have fallen down at what tracks and who's leading the contest at the moment. Marquez used to head that all of the time, but Joan Mir surely has got to be close to the top of that in MotoGP.
But then it seems like absolute madness that Paco Sanchez, his team manager, has apparently gone on record and said that he won't be moving from Honda. Like, how long can you keep that up? Even Joan Mir admitted himself, like, he doesn't know how much longer his body can take it. But going back to something you picked up on, Keith, Jack, I'm not sure whether you would have heard about this or perhaps saw the quotes from somewhere. The TNT coverage, Susie Perry was chatting with Paolo Campanotti at the start of the grid. I think was it on Saturday? I can't remember which day it was. But he said something really peculiar about Ducati not believing in young riders anymore, Keith. What? I couldn't pick apart what he meant by that.
Well, Jack can go for that, being the young man on the trackside. But I mean, I've got my own theories regarding that.
Yeah, I spoke to Paolo after the news on Saturday from MotoGP.com, and he's basically said the same thing in the fact that they've had a long running relationship with Ducati, basically being their junior program. They've developed Pecco Bagnaia, Danilo Petrucci, Jack Miller, and what they hoped was Jorge Martin plus others to come in, to learn, to develop, and then move up to the factory squads. And in the space of 6 months, Marc Marquez has come in and completely blown that up. The reason that they've signed these young, talented riders like Enea Bastianini, like Marco Bezzecchi, is to progress them and eventually for them to get to the factory seat. And Campanotti and the Pramac team were really, really frustrated at Delinia and Ducati's decision to bypass Jorge Martin, given everything that he's done, to not get that seat next to Pecco Bagnaia next year. And it was interesting that Campanotti said as well that the trigger point for him to decide I'm off to Yamaha was in Mugello on the last lap when Enea Bastianini passed Martin, and there was camera shots of Claudio Domenicali, the Ducati Corsa CEO, and others going absolutely crazy at Enea Bastianini passing Jorge Martin. And he asked the question, isn't that a Ducati rider passing another Ducati rider? Why are you so excited about that? And for him, he said, that was the moment I was decided I'm off to Yamaha next year.
Elevate your weekend with premium hospitality in the comfort of the exclusive MotoGP VIP Village, either in the private Premier Lounge or MotoGP Lounge, with a specially crafted breakfast, lunch and afternoon treats served daily and an all-day open bar, not to mention incredible views of the track action. All hospitality packages ensure you'll experience the Grand Prix weekend of your dreams. But that's just the beginning. With exclusive perks like team garage experiences, paddock access, rider meet and greets, and pit lane walks, every moment is packed with excitement and thrills for the ultimate weekend.
And it was underlined at the weekend, if you saw it, when top of the qualifying tree was Bagnaia, and then Jorge Martin put in a quicker time, and they cut to the red camp, and they all looked like they'd been shot in the foot. It definitely isn't comfortable there at the moment between the two teams, which is a great shame because they both have such brilliantly unique places in that paddock. The Pramac team for me has the respect of the paddock generally. I mean, like so how can you be a kind of party camp like they are? Great fun, great personalities, and yet one of the most professional teams in the paddock. They're no jokers. They are serious about what they do, and they do it very well. And they've got great backing. And Yamaha, honestly, for me, it's a steal for Yamaha. It really is an opportunity for Yamaha. As long as they come up at the end of the day with the engineering, with the factory backup, which I'm sure they're going to. I don't think they're messing around here at all. I think they really have, as you said, I love the all-in gambling thing really does apply when it comes to this level of funding and level of competition. Fantastic stuff. And you said it, Jack. I mean, Ducati, are they on the wane? We see it in all sports. You watch across, I make often the analogy for Formula One. I blame Harry Benjamin for this because Harry obviously is our co-host often, and Harry is now ensconced in the Sky F1 situation, and we don't see so much of him now. He will be back, by the way. He's not gone forever. But we've got a Red Bull situation at the moment where they are beginning just to fall away slightly. Adrian Newey, their fantastic designer, is off. Don't know where he's going. We'll find out. Doesn't really matter that much to us in motorbikes, but it is significant for Red Bull. The weekend, they were clashing and struggling with it. Will we see the same with Ducati? Ducati have been dominant, as you said, Jack, for a long, long time. Maybe this now is their time. Maybe the tide will change by the end of this year. I don't expect, it's going to be a Ducati probably that wins the World Championship this year anyway. For me, and being a mischief maker, come on, Jorge.
Yeah, and are they going to fight for the World Championship next year? Of course they are. They've got Bagnaia and Marc Marquez and a team together. They're going to win a lot of races. They're going to fight for the World Championship. But I think you're right in what you're saying in that they've had such a stranglehold of the sport for the past 3 years, and it's not going to be the same next year. KTM are going to this 4-factory bike, first factory team and a second factory team. Yamaha are doing exactly the same with Pramac. They've said it's not an independent team, it's not a satellite team. They are going to be our second factory team, and we're going to treat them as such. So their rivals are getting very, very serious, and I think they see an opportunity to try and bring this era of dominance to an end as well next year.
And circling back to Honda, Jack, what do you think of the criticism that Honda aren't doing enough to get themselves out of the doldrums? What are you seeing on the ground?
I think it's valid. You look at Yamaha; they're in a very similar position at the start of the year. Yamaha have completely changed their way of work. But it's been spoken about at length of sort of the Japanese culture, the Japanese mindset when it comes to bringing new parts and developing the bike. And Yamaha have looked at the European competitors. They brought in Max Bartolini from Ducati, who's Gigi Dell'Igna's right-hand man, plus some others as well. Now they've got very much a European mindset. This weekend, for example, they had a brand new engine. With the concessions, they're allowed to homologate a new engine throughout the course of the year. They tested it in the spring break around 2 weeks ago in Valencia. 2 weeks later, it's on the bike for a Grand Prix, which is just not what Yamaha would have done 12 months ago. Whereas Honda, on the other side, Johan Mir, when speaking to the media over the weekend, said that they're not expecting huge steps forward in terms of updates until probably mid-September around the Misano test. And that is a long time to wait for the bike to remain as uncompetitive as it is. The best Honda on Sunday was 45 seconds away from Pecco Bagnaia and the race winner. They are a long, long way from reclaiming the dominance they once had. Yamaha on one side, you feel, are trending in the right direction and are only going to go one way. Bit by bit, they are moving forward, and sooner or later, they're going to be competing inside the top 5. That feels a long way away for Honda at the moment.
Context for the Yamaha, if I may. If you remember back to the Petronas days, when the Petronas team was about to launch, and we weren't sure where the satellite Yamahas were going to turn up at that time. And I remember from the factory, they needed to know by June of the previous year where they were providing motorbikes and what motorbikes they were providing, purely and simply because the engineering lead-in time was so long. And that was how Yamaha looked at it previously. The June of the previous season was when they needed to have that cut-off point for their engineering department to get it together for the following season. And all of a sudden, they've turned all that around. Can you imagine the scrabbling that's going on down at the factories? I mean, it's all very well us seeing the headline of it. We've got the tip of the iceberg here. All the development that's going on behind the scenes, back of the factory, and the amount of work that's going on. And that's why I'm reluctant to criticize Honda, because Honda, the mighty Honda, you would think somewhere in the background, somewhere behind the scenes, somewhere back at the HRC, they are beavering away to produce stuff. What that's going to be, we'll see. They've got the concessions, so they ought to be able to do something, by the sort of, I don't know, last third of this year perhaps. So we'll see how hard Honda are working by the end of this year. I'll reserve me criticism for the moment.
Oh, it's not looking great at the moment, though, let's be honest. Let's talk a little bit more about the happenings of the race on Sunday. I just wanted to kind of pick out Fabio Di Giannantonio, because I just thought he looked so good this weekend. And I don't know if you guys would agree, but I just feel like with Fabio, you kind of know when he's going to have a good weekend. He just seems to when he's going to have a good weekend, it's like consistently good across the weekend. He just seems to turn up at certain places and just have that little bit of something. But he has got to be someone. I mean, we don't know anything about his future right now, do we? Or have I missed something? No. But he seems to be somebody that's so worthy of a decent ride next year.
And yet you've got Digi had a good weekend comparatively with what's been going on. Bezzecchi, who we expected to be up in the top trio, had the most diabolical weekend of all times at a track that he's particularly good at. Bezzecchi's obviously settled now at Aprilia, I think it is, isn't it? So that deal is done. I mean, there are still, 10 places to be confirmed on the grid at the moment. So they're potentially, I think pretty much most of them. I mean, Trackhouse, they're going to keep Raul Fernandez and Miguel Oliveira. I've written here. That seems to be the case. Johan Mir, you've talked about, who will go alongside Luca Marini at Honda, perhaps. The Pramac Yamaha team haven't made any confirmations yet. We've got someone to go alongside Quartararo. So the Yamaha guys have got their 3 spaces to be confirmed. Alex Marquez, we know, is now signed for Gresini. We've got Jack Miller out of sorts. Digi's out of sorts. Morbidelli's out of sorts. Augusto Fernandez he ain't going to hang on, I don't think. Rins is another man injured after the weekend of that massive eyesight at turn 1. Bless him.
How problematic will that be, do you think, Jack, for Rins' future?
Not at all, I don't think. It seems as though that's already a done deal. He's going to stay with Yamaha for another couple of years. I'll be shocked if he moves elsewhere. There was talk that it might even get announced in the next 7 to 10 days. So that is very, very close to being done. The interesting thing is Fabio Di Meglio. Absolutely right in what you say, Amy. He was fantastic this weekend. And I absolutely adore Fabio. He is such a nice lad. He's so talented on the bike as well. You know, the way in which he's progressed since he moved into MotoGP, he's gone from one of the guys that's, you know, been on the back couple of rows of the grid, has been struggling and grafting just to finish in the points. And now he's taking it to Marc Marquez on equal machinery and hasn't just done it this weekend, but in other places as well. He's been the standout GP23 bike just behind Marc. He's been well clear of his teammate Bezzecchi, outperforming Alex Marquez, and he's got a couple of options for next year. Pramac Yamaha, I think, really, really keen, or Yamaha, because they are going to be Yamaha contracted riders to go to Pramac, quite keen on bringing him on board next year. But I think Ducati are trying to find space for him as well. But the issue is VR46 will probably take Morbidelli in, which makes a lot of sense given the fact he's a VR46 Academy rider. Fermin Aldeguer has to go somewhere, and talk is that's going to be VR46. Now, Grassini have got one spot filled, so it's looking like it may well be Yamaha for Didier next year, which would come as a surprise.
And to think that last year he very nearly didn't have this year. You know, if it hadn't been for the fact that him and Frankie Carcetti had got it together and chucked the old gunpowder plot underneath the thing, slung everything at it and made it work for them, completely went out of the Ducati playbook to try and get that motorbike to work for Digi. And he very nearly never had a 2024. Remarkable, isn't it, really? We might have lost one of the best talents and one of the nicest guys in the paddock just because they couldn't quite get the bike to work for him. But Frankie Carcetti was a saviour, I think, in collaboration with Digi and the team.
Yeah, he was doing complete.
Yeah, that's a shocker.
Saturday of Qatar, he's told the story since that he sat down with his manager and his assistant. All the grid spots were filled. Someone had already signed for the R46, and that was it. He was out. He was going to be doing something else next year. Then he won on Sunday in Qatar. Monday morning, Paolo Ciabatti rang him up and said, "We've had a change of plans. You're going to be going to the R46 next year." It's amazing how things can change so quickly.
Glad they did.
Yeah, big time.
So we've already mentioned Alex Rins, not expecting to see him this weekend in Germany. I was about to say next weekend, but it is this weekend now. Blimey. Aleix Espargaro, he's ruled out for this weekend as well.
Maybe. I think he might give it a go. I think he broke his pinky finger, his little finger on his right hand. And he got away with just doing that as well. That was fast.
There were some big crashes this weekend.
And that's just a picture of Assen. Everywhere's fast. There's no slow corners there. When you go down, it hurts. And Aleix, I think with that little finger, I think he's going to give it a go in Germany. Alex Rins definitely ruled out. I think he's got a broken foot and maybe an issue with his wrist as well. But Aleix should probably give it a go. But let's see. It's not going to be 100% of shots.
Aleix was lucky to not get wiped out by Marc Marquez with that really determined. I've never seen anything quite like that from that far back. Incredible. Mind you, Aleix pretty much was, his crash was that he just looked too fast in the closing stages. I don't quite understand it myself, but it was a big old off. He was lucky he didn't get tangled with the bike. But it's not what you want in your retirement year, is it really?
No, definitely not. Well, before we turn our attention to this weekend in Germany, let's have a look at what happened in our Moto2 and Moto3 races. Jack Appleyard took his second victory of 2024, and he is now only 14 points off Sergio Garcia in the championship. And I think what we're really starting to see with is something that he kind of also did in Moto3, where he has that learning year, and then he just absolutely applies everything that he has took under his belt in that year. And you see him, he looks like a real serious championship contender.
Yeah, big time. He's my favourite for it at the moment. I think he's on a bit of a roll. We know what Agura is all about. It's going to be a close fight, I think, right down to the line with his teammate Sergio Garcia and maybe Fermin Aldeguer, but he needs a win, does Aldeguer. I think if he gets a win, he can go on a bit of a roll as well. But at the moment, it's just not happening for him for whatever reason. And as a result, Agura looks like a real threat at the moment. And I'd be surprised if anyone's able to stop him from winning the World Championship. As you say, he's done it before in Moto3 once he gets going. He's got that experience from nearly winning the Moto2 World Championship when he took it down to the final race with Augusto Fernandez in 2022, was it? I think. I'm terrible with years, but a couple of years ago anyway. And of course, he'll have learned a lot from that. And I think he looks ready, does Agura. He's in good form at the moment.
Aldeguer might have his eyes on 2025 and that move up to MotoGP. Sometimes that's not a good thing when you've got your eyes somewhere else, particularly when it's as intense as it is. Dixon finishing in 4th place, I thought was a good result for him. And what was he, the winner last year? I think he was. So it's good to see Jake on that kind of form. He needs to really build on that if he can through the rest of the year, I think, for Jake Dixon. Joe Roberts, collarbone, which was a great shame. And again, the Joe Roberts thing, he needs these performances. Trackhouse haven't signed their 2 guys yet, although we pretty much reliably hear that they probably will sign the 2 guys that they've already got at Trackhouse MotoGP. But Joe Roberts, being an American, surely must be the guy that's sort of sitting in the wings, perhaps, of that deal at some stage in the future, but only if he can put it together consistently, I would suggest.
Yeah, Davide Brivio, the boss at Trackhouse Racing, for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to want to have Joe on the bike next year. And I know that Joe, his manager John Hopkins, have been down there constantly trying to tell them just how good he is. And do get a sense that crash on Friday was potentially a result of Trackhouse not being too interested in him and him going out there and trying to prove everybody wrong and maybe just overriding it. And he was desperate to ride on Sunday as well. I spoke to him in pit lane on Saturday and he said, should I do a Lorenzo? And he wanted to do it, but the rules, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, have changed since then. He obviously went under through anaesthetic on Friday night for them to do the operation. If you had anaesthetic, you are ruled unfit for the next 48 hours. So he wasn't able to, but he's definitely going to be riding next weekend in Germany with that plated collarbone written in 2.
I recently had some anaesthetic, and I remember I'd forgotten what it was like. Your next day, you're sort of, hey, man. I can understand why that might not be the case. The only thing I will say in the Trackhouse situation, I mean, it's all very well Brivio and co from an ideal team management point of view, wanting to have the rider that they want to have. But at the end of the day, Justin Marks and Trackhouse, it is an American team. It's funded from America, and there might be some other sort of moves afoot. We need American riders in the top class. Politically, it's an area. Although I have to say that, with some sympathy towards Hopper and co, is that Joe's just not quite there yet. He's a lovely guy. I really like Joe Roberts, but he just isn't really at this point MotoGP potential, it would seem, which is a shame.
I'm not sure I agree, Keith. He's won a race this year. He's led the World Championship. He's still in contention for it. We've got an American rider, an American team that's just come to the championship there. We've got new American owners coming in next year. Now is the time. Just make it happen. Put him on the grid next year. Because if they don't do it this year and, doesn't have the same form next year, then just look in Moto3, look in the Junior World Championship. There's not another American star coming through for the next 10, maybe 15 years. So if it doesn't happen now, it's going to be a long, long wait for the next one to come through. So for me, if Davide Brivio, Trackhouse are listening, get it done. Get him on the bike next year because it is for the benefit of the sport.
Do you think this is a situation where Liberty might come in?
I think Dorna as well.
Dorna as well, but it's obviously in Liberty's interest. I mean, they will bring with them, I'm sure, a lot of interested American parties that will all be asking the same question. But if we invest in this championship, in this sport, where is the future in it? If you don't bring this guy, the only American rider that is likely to have a seat in MotoGP for the foreseeable future, then what are we investing in?
Mm.
Good point.
We've got the same problem in the UK.
Yeah, we need a British rider. We need an American rider. Unfortunately, things just aren't working out for Jake at the moment, and it's not all his fault at all. The Calyx just isn't at the level of the Boscoscuro. The change of suspension means that he isn't fighting for the World Championship. And I think if he was to get a ride at the moment, then I'm not sure he's at the level. Potentially last year he was, and right now it's not going his way. But this is the moment for Joe. He's right.
It's the Jake Dixon analogy is the underpinning part for you for Joe Roberts. Then is it? Don't miss your opportunity. Get in there.
Yeah. Whilst he's in the form that he's in, you know, for the benefit of the sport, and Joe is absolutely going to be able to go in and do a good job as well. He's got a history of riding superbikes in AMA. Just look at the likes of Fabio Di Meglio that we're speaking about. Was he a superstar in Moto2? Won a couple of races, but was never fighting for a world championship. But look at him now. You've got to give guys opportunity.
Hang on a minute. You can go better than that. You can go Quattararo. He won one official race and one disqualified race, if I remember correctly.
And look what Fabio has done to the sport in France. He's an absolute superstar there. Le Mans sets the record year on year for the biggest attendance in Grand Prix history, mainly because of him. So let's get the deal done. Let's try and get Joe on the grid next year.
And in Moto3, the home crowd were just denied a home win.
Yeah, Colin Vire at the end of the day, he's another one. He's got a bit of an old school way about him. I think that's probably what the attraction to me is to some extent. He's just the way he speaks, the English that he uses, and so on and so forth. I love the bloke. I think he's fantastic, and he's bloody fast. And he just missed out on pole in qualifying as well. I can't remember now. I didn't write it down. He had that massive high side as well, didn't he? So he had to come back from a massive off as well to put himself front end and centre at his home race.
It was so difficult to watch. We don't have favourites, but everyone in the media centre, everyone in the grandstands, we all wanted Colin to do it. It would have been great. And, Ivan Ortola, you have to say, those last 3 laps, he was unbelievable to close him down and then pass him. So all credit to him. But I did say to Ivan afterwards, said, you do know that's a really unpopular win. And he just went, sorry, Colin, what do you want me to do? And I did feel for Colin. But he was pretty magnanimous in the end. Of course, there will have been some frustration, but he had those great scenes at the end where I think he said, pretty much half of his village had made the trip across to Assen, and he stopped at the little section and he said he was up against the fence celebrating. He saw his auntie, his uncle, his cousins all going ballistic. So he said that was pretty special. Despite not winning the race, it's still some memories that will keep with him for a very long time.
Bless.
Assen is a very special place. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you leave Assen, I don't know whether those that have been there will know what I'm talking about, and you will as well, Jack. You drive away from Assen from the racetrack, and everybody's sat in their front gardens waving to you. Like, it doesn't matter if you're part of the entourage and you're in a truck or whatever you're in. There's just thousands and thousands of people lining bridges as you're driving home, watching all the motorbikes going. It's like the event hasn't finished when it's finished. But they're all sat in their gardens. They've been watching it on monitors and watching the races at home. And then they watch everybody driving down the lanes on the way out of the track. And for miles and miles and miles, the support is still there. It's a great place.
It is a great place, but Sachsenring is also a great place. And you guys have already tipped Jorge Martin potentially for the win this weekend, but we're forgetting one main character. He's not called the King of the Ring for no reason. He might have had a dip of form in the most recent years, but you are not going to rule out Marc Marquez.
No, I don't think you are. The trouble is with the Sachsenring, I mean, we can't make a comparison with Assen. Assen's still a proper racetrack. A bit narrow, but it's a proper racetrack. Whereas Sachsenring is really a kart track. It's a tiny, difficult, Nadgery kind of a place, which really suits the aggression of the likes of Marc Marquez, where everything pretty much is slipping and sliding and out of control. But of course, in his hands, he's in control. But I think we're just seeing such a massive change. I mean, Jack touched on it earlier with the way that the likes of Martin and Bagnaia and the like of adjusting themselves into taking the maximum out of a motorbike and out of a track without throwing it through the fence. I mean, touch wood, it will continue from a safety point of view this weekend. But I've seen some big old offs at Sachsenring, and barriers are a bit close in places, and so on. It's. I'm amazed it's still on the calendar, but of course it has to be because we don't have a round in that region.
Yeah, I'm pretty amazed as well that if you'd asked me at the start of the year when Marc Marquez's move to Ducati was announced and all the hype was building, you'd have boxed off Austin and the Sachsenring as being foregone conclusions. He's going to win there. Of course he is. Austin, he was in contention, but he had that brake issue, eventually crashed out. A few days out from it, I don't think Marc Marquez is the favourite to win this weekend, which I can't believe I'm saying, but really don't think he's the favourite. Will he be on the podium? Yes, absolutely. I'll put my mortgage on it. But I think he's up against it to win this weekend, which, I might look very, very silly in a few days' time, and it won't be the first time that's happened. But I'm just not convinced he's going to go out and make it look as easy as he has done in years previous.
Well, funny enough you say that, Jack. I was going to ask you something, which might sound like a silly question, but given what you've just said, I think maybe you'll give me a similar answer. So technically, mathematically, Marc Marquez still is in with a chance of winning the championship. I think is it 58 points now?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know the maths after he moved back to 10, but over 50.
Do we think he's going to win the championship? Is he a legitimate title contender this year?
Yeah. Yes.
On paper, do you think?
Will he just... I think he's going to be on the periphery of it. He's going to be knocking on the door up until 2 or 3 rounds to go. But I don't think he's going to win the World Championship this year. The form that Bagnaia and Martin are in at the moment, I think they're going to finish first and second. And then it's a fight for third. And I think Marc will probably finish third in the World Championship. And he will view that as a success before then getting ready to go again with the full factory bike next year. But yeah, right now, I don't think Marc's going to win the World Championship. I won't put any money on him to win the World Championship. He'll be a bit of a spoiler, and I think he will win a few races, although as the year goes on, that 2024 bike is only going to get better, and the 2023 bike is going to stay as it is. But no, I don't think he's going to win the World Championship. The form book doesn't suggest that he will.
All I'm going to say to that is ditto. While you were giving us that rundown, Jack, I've just been looking at the weather forecast for the Sachsenring, and it looks like we're going to have a bit of overnight rain on Friday night and on Saturday night, and later on Sunday, right around race time. So it will be interesting. It's going to be warm as well there by the look of it. So track temperature is going to be up. I think Sachsenring again, it will be down to the weather to a certain extent as well. And then if we have those inconsistencies that we thought we might be getting at Assen. The only thing that was at Assen was the track temperature was quite a bit different from Friday through Saturday through Sunday. It was up and down, which made it quite difficult from a tyre pressure point of view, as we found out. Sachsenring could have that compounded as well with a bit of wet weather in there.
Well, Keith and Renita will be back on Thursday to give the official preview to the German Grand Prix. But that's it for this week. Many thanks for listening, and do remember to give us a like and definitely hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to us. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please do the same. And remember, you can check out the links below for our YouTube memberships and our Patreon memberships that will give you exclusive access to all types of content. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on once again. I'm sure we'll catch up with you at some point later on this season. But from all of us here, it's goodbye for now.
Want an unparalleled Grand Prix experience? MotoGP Premier has you covered. Take 10% off selected 2024 ticket packages at the German, British, Austrian and Aragon Grand Prix. Just use code OMG10 at motogp.motogp.com/OMG at the checkout. Not applicable to MotoGP VIP Village or ticket and hotel packages. Ends 15th of July 2024.